Hello, my name is Chris Harding, and I'm an administrator at Facebook Beginning OpenFoam, which is a group of members who are beginners who are helping other beginners. And there's some people in there with a little more advanced knowledge as well. Some people have actually written solvers, and they help out a lot, and we appreciate them tremendously. And today, what I'm going to talk about is part two. In part one, which is a video that I put on YouTube and shared at the beginning OpenFoam with the challenge, there we took 4 points from the cavity tutorial and we grew it in the Z direction. And we actually have that one up, but we're not going to take a look at that. It's a long tutorial. It was 56 minutes and 32 seconds. So if you're interested in just growing in the Z direction, then take a look at that tutorial or something you could probably figure out. But the thing is, today what we're going to do is we're going to grow in the Y direction, and then we're going to grow in the Z direction. So when we did 4 points in the Z direction, we only had to specify half the points because the cavity is a total of 8 points. But today we're only going to specify a quarter of the points, 2 out of 8. And we're going to grow in the Y and the Z direction pretty easily. The hard part is doing the blocks and then doing the faces under the boundary. And that's the most difficult part of this. But we're going to work it out. And I'm doing this, and as I do it, then I'm creating, there's a chance I'll make an error, and I'm just going to go along with it, but I'll figure out the error and move forward. And I think that's the way a lot of people work with OpenFoam anyways, and let's get started. So as you can see, I'm in the run. So let's do ls here. And ls is capitalized. Okay, so we have a point field directory we created in part one with the pointField.H file. So we're going to change directly to pointField. Okay, we get a cavity, and we're not going to take a look at the cavity right now. If you're interested in that, take a look at the end of the part one tutorial. But what we're going to do is we're going to clone the cavity. We're going to clone it to a name of 2 point, and because we're starting out with 2 points. I'm using version 7 of OpenFoam Foundation, so I have case management tools like foam, clone, case. And we'll go with cavity to 2 point. And you can see it took the system, cloned it, and put it into 2 point as system. Took the constant, cloned it, and put it in the constant as 2 point. And, and it took 0, cloned it, and put it into 2 point as 0 file. So let's go ahead and change to 2 point. And let's do an ls. And as you can see, we have 0 constant in system. And one thing we're going to do more often in this tutorial, that's a good habit, is we're going to use foam clean tutorials and foam clean polymesh so that we don't have any errors. But in part one, we didn't use them as many, and I should have, because it's better. It's a better way to operate with OpenFoam. And so we're going to look at what we have in the constant directory by going Genie, System, and we have a clone of the last one, so we have 4 points. We know we're only going to use 2 points. This is code stream. This is going to be a very basic manipulation of code stream, but I didn't understand code stream when I first started, and that made it a little more difficult, plus getting the faces correct. I'm a little better at it now. Okay, so let's say we're going to start with 2 points, and we're going to basically make a copy of this because we're going to grow in the Y direction. Grow. We're going to label this SY. That's going to be the point size, which is going to be 2. The new set, after we finish, we're going to have 4 points. It's going to be 2 times 2, which is 4. We're going to start at I is equal to 0, and we got to change this SZ to SY. We're going to go from 0 to SY, which is 2. So we're going to create, so when I is equal to 0, SY is going to be equal to 2. And when I is equal to 1, SY is going to be equal to 3. So 0 is going to correspond to 2, and 1 is going to correspond to 3. And that means it's not going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to go 0, 1, 3, 2 when you're looking at the actual points in the back. It's going to go 0, 1, 3, 2. But that's no big deal. When you're working with more complicated geometry, often we have to use points that are a little out of order anyways. I'm going to say J, and we don't have to specify or declare J, because J is declared here with the label and is set equal to 0. So we're going to make sure we change this to J, and we're going to grow it in the Y direction, so +1. Okay, so let's see what we have with this. We made a lot of changes, and let's see what we have. We're probably going to get error, but we should get our points because we haven't changed the block or faces. Foam clean tutorials. I guess it's not foam, it's foam. And we're going to say foam clean poly mesh. And now we're going to run block mesh. Expect an error. Okay, we got an error. And we didn't actually generate, because I was not declared in this scope, line 38. So line 38, I. This should be J. So let's Control S and save this in Genie. Then let's go ahead and do foam clean tutorials, foam clean polymesh, and block mesh. Okay, it's given some errors because we didn't do the faces, but it gave us the points. You can see here is 0.0, and I suggest that you take the time now to go ahead, pause the video, and put these on paper, and then draw your diagram, which is going to be a cavity. It's going to be a 3D rectangle or square, except it's going to be 0.1. And and here's a mistake I can see that I made, is it's not supposed to grow in the Y direction and the Z direction, which is what it's doing. It's growing in the Y direction and Z direction. I forgot to remove the Z, that's next. So it was growing in the Y and Z direction. So let's go ahead and change that. Run this again, and we should have a okay, so it didn't grow in the Z direction. We have 4 points because it grew in the Y direction. And you can see here, 0.2 corresponds to 0.0. The only difference is that it grew in the Y direction by 1. But it's the same, but it grew in the Y direction by 1. And 0.4 is the same as 0.0, but it grew in the Z direction by 0.1. And over here you can see that in the Y direction, that when J is equal to 0, SY equals 2. So that's the reason why 0 and 2 are related to each other. And then when in the Z direction, when I is equal to 0, SZ is 2 times what was up here, which is 4, so it's going to be 8. So or excuse me, it's SZ, so it's going to be 4 because it's the point size up here, which is 4. And then now the new size is going to be 8. So it's going to create 8 total points, which we have from 0 to 7. And so the thing is that it grows in the Z direction, so when I is equal to 0, SZ is 4. So just like up here, when J is equal to 0, SY is 2. Here, when I is equal to 0, SZ is equal to 4. So that's the reason why 4 and 0 are related. One corresponds to the other. And so in the Z direction, 0 and 4 is related. So you draw a line from 0 to 4, and that's your Z growth. In the Y direction, 0 and 2 are related. So you draw a vertical line perpendicular from 0 to 2, and that's your y-axis growth. And then 3 is on the other side, so it goes 0, 1, 3, 2 in a counterclockwise direction if you're looking at it from the front, but it goes 0, 3, 2, 1 if you go in the other direction, which is important because now that brings us up to, this is where it looks like for the cavity case when it grows in the Z direction, 4 points in the Z direction, but we know that we have 0, 2, you gotta put a space in here, 3, 1, and then it's going to be 4, 6, 7, 5. Or wait a minute, I gotta look at that. No, I take that back. It's going to be 0, 1, 3, 2. And then it's going to be, because the origin is held close to you, and then you go in a clockwise direction when you're looking at it, and then it's going to be 4, 5, 7, 6. You can get that information from the manual. The fact that the origin is going to be close to you, closest to you, and then the the direction clockwise that you're supposed to go to specify it. So we got the hex block, hopefully. So now we need to change our walls because these are for when it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to change this, and this is moving wall. So the moving wall is 2, 6, 7, 3. I'll probably make some errors here, but might have to pause. And this is a fixed wall, and the fixed wall is 1, 3, 7, 5. Oh, okay. So it's 1, 3, 7, 5, and then we have 0, 1, 5, 4. So we got 0, 1, 5, 4. That's here. Bottom is the same. It was only the top 2 points that changed, or the top points that changed rather. And then we got 0, 4, 6, 2. So we got 0, 4, 6, 2. And that's the left wall. So let me organize that. So it'll be easier to find errors later. And let's go ahead and see, this is right wall. This is left wall. And this, now I put O in there instead of 0. Okay, this is 0462. Well, actually, this is right wall. This is left wall. Okay, let's go ahead. Now we're going to change the front and back. And 0231 is the back. 0231. And in the front, these are type empty because it's going to be two-dimensional. And the front is 4576. So the 6 and the 7 are switched because those points are switched. Okay, let's save this. Let's see what kind of errors we get now. Let's go foam clean tutorials, foam clean polymesh, and block mesh. Okay, mesh. So we have a mesh. It says that it produced 400 cells and it has a total of 882 points, and we have our points up here that we only specified 2, 0 and 1. We specified these two and we grew 2 in the y direction, so 1 1, that's in the y direction, and then we grew all 4 of these in the z direction, and 4 corresponds to 0 and 4 corresponds to 2. So basically 4 is the z direction from 0, and 5 is the z direction from 1, and you can see here 1 is 1 in the y direction, 1 is 1 0 0, and 5 is 1 0 0.1, so it's growing in the z direction. So I want to show something real quick, because when I was doing this, I actually, well, first let's take a look. Before I do that, let's take a look at the block. Here's the block. You can see 0 and 4 is in the z direction, and 0, 2 is in the y direction. So this goes from 0, 1, 3, 2 with the manual tutorial, because they created their own vertices. They grew that in 0, 1, 2, 3. And when we grew from 4 points z direction, we also had 0, 1, 2, 3. But now we're growing in the y direction, and I've explained how the j, when it's 0, sz is 2, so 0 corresponds to 2. But when it grows in the z direction, when I is 0, then it grows, when I is 0, then it grows in the sz is 4, so 4 corresponds to 0. So anyway, so now what I'm going to do is, because when I was first doing this, to be honest, I was having some difficulty with my faces and my blocks, and I was getting some strange errors. And one was OS stream. So I thought, well, maybe I need to put in OS stream. So I put in OS stream, in just case you make the same error, or if you try this and if you got the same error, then I want to show you what error it produces. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's close out of this parafoam block, and let's go ahead and do a foam clean tutorials, foam clean polymesh, and we'll run block mesh. we get an error. It says point 4 labels out of range and from 0 to 3. And then it says line 80 is on the block mesh dictionary. If you look at line 80 is the same line as the block mesh dictionary saying point 4 is out of range. But really, we know that this block mesh dictionary works. The only thing that's wrong with it right now is the fact that we have the OS points. So when I had that, I was changing my faces and my and then I figured out that it was the OS. Yeah, I didn't need it. OS points in the OS, and I didn't need it. So I actually closed it out. So let's take a look at the mesh. And to do that, we're going to have to rerun this. And let's go ahead and save this. And then I'll show you, because we want to test this. So we want to do parafoam mesh. So just parafoam. Okay, we're not getting any errors. That's good. We got a solid. Let's change it to solid color, and then let's take a look at surface with edges. And because we had specified 0.1, 0.1 here and not 1, we get grading in the Y direction and we get grading in the X direction. And so when it's 0.1, it goes from big to little. So it starts in the X direction big and it gets little. If this was 10, then it'd be little and then gets big. And same thing for the Y direction over here. If this is 10, it's in one direction. It's big at the beginning, or if it's 10 rather, it's small at the beginning and it's little at the end. And if it's 0.1, it's like this. It's big at the beginning and it's small at the end. And so the thing is we want to change this now to 1 and just do in the Y direction. So it should only give us a gradient in this direction, and make sure that it works. It works for both, so let's make sure it works for one. Foam Clean Polymesh. After Foam Clean tutorials, not parafoam, block mesh. And then parafoam. Okay, we got mesh. We didn't get any error messages, which is good. Now that should be a gradient in the Y direction. And it's gradient in Y. Oh, you know why? I forgot to save. Low errors. Foam Clean tutorials rather. Foam Clean Polymesh. Block mesh. Okay, it's 400 cells still. Parafoam to see the mesh. No errors, which is good. And change this to solid. Surface with edges. And you can see it actually has a gradient in the Y direction. So it worked in the Y direction. So now let's go ahead and change Y direction to 1. And try it, because when I first was playing around with this, I somehow created geometry that caused, and this, I have proof of this, I have a video but I haven't posted it. I somehow, because I was doing it live, and I created geometry that had, by just using simple code stream, it switched to simple grading X and Y. So it put Y where X is and X where Y is, and one would grade in the other direction. So if I start out with 0.1 here, it actually would grade in the Y direction. And I'm like, what's going on? So I figured that out. Somehow I created the geometry, but I changed the hex block and I changed the faces, and then it gave me the correct geometry and the correct grading. So let's go ahead and see. This is in the Y direction. Let's save this, and then let's go ahead and see if it now grows in the X direction. And then we'll go back to 1.1, foam clean tutorials, foam clean polymesh, block mesh. Got 400 cells, still printed out the actual points. And so let's take a look at the parafoam. Take a look at the mesh. Click apply. We got no errors, and we got a solid. We have a solid, and use surface with edges. And you can see it grows in the X, it has a gradient in the X direction. It's specified as 0.1 over here in simple grading. So it grows, it's 0.1, so it goes from big cell to small cell. And then Y is a 1-to-1 relationship, so it's just, they're equally spaced all the way up. And so now let's go to 1.1.1, and then I'll show you how to put the points in order. If you want to do that, I'll show you the code related to that, because I did that. Foam clean tutorials, polymesh, block mesh, once again there's no errors. Hit apply. We got some geometry. Hit solid color. Hit surface with edges, and we have evenly spaced 20 in one direction, evenly spaced 20 in the Y direction. So 20 in the X direction and 20 in the Y direction. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Genie here to go to show you how to actually make it so it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, just like the points are created when you specify points using vertices. And a simple code change. So let's go to run, SP 2020, 2-point folder, system, block mesh, and here we have it. And I'm going to let you do that, then check it in all the directions to make sure, and set up your boundary and your hex blocks, your faces, your boundary faces and your hex blocks, which is going to be one hex block because you're only doing the cavity. And I've already done it, and when you're finished, it will actually label it with the back being 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the front being 4, 5, 6, 7. And so it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like the original block mesh actually did. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So anyways, that's it. Please comment on my video, give me suggestions. I'm new to these tutorials. I'm not expert, but after I do something, then I actually like to share it. And I put challenges on my Facebook beginning OpenFoam. But give me an idea if I'm doing something that you don't appreciate, and let me know how I can be better, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, obviously, and that's the reason why I'm doing these tutorials. So if you will, give me some feedback, and also like my videos if you like them, because that's nice feedback too. And I'll be honest, it makes me feel good. But thank you, and you have a nice day.